Welcome everyone to our Sparked AU Core document bundle information session today. Thank you for coming along. Um, so we've got, I'll just skip to this one first. Basically, what we're doing as part of these information sessions is looking at candidate profiles for AU Core Release 3. We have a pretty standard agenda that we go through. We try to get some agreement around scope and usage of a profile. And what are the must support elements for it, must support obligations, value set bindings, and search parameters. And these are pretty much the high level things that we need to work through when we're putting a proposal to the working group. So
Okay,
these
Keith.
information
Are you,
sessions,
did you move slides or
I
are you
did.
still in the, I can't see it. I mean, I can see the cover slide, but I don't know if anyone else can see the neck, like,
Damn
The
it.
slide
I
doesn't
tested
move
it.
for me
We
too.
It
tested
was
this yesterday.
we tested this yesterday and it worked fine. So I'm not sure that it's, no, I don't know. Maybe it is
Well,
me.
I still see only the cover slide, which is on the information session, nothing else.
Yeah, me too.
maybe it's like the more popular you are. Because if you tested it with like one person yesterday and it worked, and now we've got like, I don't know, 23. Oh,
Oh,
now I can see
oh,
it.
I
I
just
don't
got
know
the
how
update.
long a lag that was, but now I can see it.
It's a very long lag. Um, what if I put up my Minty? Can you see that?
No, are you
Nope.
sharing screen
Yeah,
or the presentation?
Sharing the screen.
Your video is also very laggy. It might just be your connection.
Okay, we can see the Menti now.
That was a very long lag.
Yeah, maybe turn off your video might help, Heath.
Looks like you've frozen to me.
Yeah, I'm getting nothing from him.
Michael Wilson, are you a fallback for doing some of
Um,
this, like
no,
the
I'd actually don't
slide
have the
sharing?
presentation.
Well, Heath talks to it.
No, because I don't have the presentation either.
It should be on our SharePoint.
It should be, but I have to go digging.
Yeah, okay, I'll have a look as well.
We prepped, we tested yesterday, but didn't help.
Okay, so AU Core, and the date today is the 19th.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Can you, can you hear me?
We can.
Let,
Yes.
let's see how this goes on a phone, hey?
Yep.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you see me go back to a Minty?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
that looks
right.
like it's actually working.
Phones pretty amazing, aren't they? They do better than home wireless. All right. So back to the agenda. So we're going to go through all these topics and these items are things that we need to get agreement on for a proposal to be put to the working group meeting. And it's ideal for us to have these information sessions so that we've kind of got some community agreement somewhat before we actually take this to the working group, so that we can, I guess, get through the topic much quicker within the working group and have the majority of the discussions within these information sessions in the first place. So just to kick us off though, we will do the Minty. And so if you could go off to the minty.com 48615511 if you haven't already connected. And I'll just put that back up again. So just our standard set of initial questions. So how you identify, professionally, so we'll hang on this slide for a while, but just because this gives us the opportunity to get everyone connected to Minty. So we've got 10 out of 18 at the moment, but it's also useful to know the spread of people that we've got, and it's always very good to see there's a pretty good spread. Obviously around standards development is usually a winner though. I might move to the next one, just out of interest of time, seeing that I've wasted enough already. So have you attended one of these information sessions before, but also whether you're a AU CDI attendee or a working group attendee? It's always good to see new people as well. It's amazing how we continue to have new people come along for some of these sessions. Just wait for one more because I got 15 on the last page. So there's 15. So how well do you know the following things? How well do you know fire? So if you feel that you're an expert, over on the right-hand side, or if you're on the beginner end, how well do you know AU Core? How well do you know patient summary? And also how much you've used the bundle resource type in general. We used to start with these sessions with even the top bar used to have quite a few beginners, so it's really good to see that we're the maturity of the community going forward, and that goes for AU Core as well. Okay, we've got 16, so I might move forward onto the next one. So what use cases involving bundle of type document are important to you? So for those that are new to the bundle resource, the bundle resource is used for a number of different purposes. The most common one is as a response to a search. We always get multiple search responses as a part of a bundle, so that's one type of bundle. We also have bundles that are used for transactions and batches, so that's when we're submitting data to a server. And then there's this type called document, as well as a message type as well, and that's for exchanging of resources. So there's the document one type is what is used by the patient summary implementation guide for exchanging the actual document or composition resource and all the associated resources. So patient summary, not surprising, is right up the top there. Discharge summary is also not surprising. And we've got diagnostic reports and clinical notes, etc. So It seems to have slowed down a little bit, so I might move forward, even though we've only got 11. Okay, we'll move on through the slides. So the first item is around the scope. Now, I guess just for those that perhaps are a little bit unfamiliar, please, if you have any questions around bundle, any terms that we're using, what the process is, please ask questions. As I said, we're basically going through this fairly standard agenda because for putting a profile up for proposal to the working group to be included into AU Core. And as part of that, we kind of try and set out what is the scope of this profile and its purpose and usage. And as in this particular case, I've perhaps proposed that this is the minimum set of expectations for generating, storing, discovering, and viewing clinical documents for a subject of care within Australia. And as I mentioned, this already underpins the requirements of AU patient summary, but the idea of putting in an AU Core profile for a document bundle is that we can then leverage that pattern, if you like, or this profile to actually build additional implementation guides and profiles for other types of clinical documents, such as those presented in the Minty previously, things like your discharge summaries and your encounter records, etc., and lab reports. So I'll just pause a moment if there's any sort of comments around this proposed scope. Again, in the context of producing the profile in the AU Core, it's kind of more of the principle of what we're talking about today that we're looking at, helping us to set some scope around it. That's what we're agreeing on, not necessarily the specific text that will actually go into the final profile in the implementation guide as well. There's some style that is implicit or that is consistently adopted here, but this is really for the purposes of just understanding the scope of this profile. Is there any comments or issues on this, or maybe a thumbs up to indicate? I'm not seeing any faces, so okay. Got one thumb up. Excellent, thank you. I'll take 2 as acceptance. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is to start pushing through to what are the must support elements. So some of the items around the building up what the profile looks like in general. So to do this, we look at other implementation guides that are relevant to this particular resource or profile. And across the top, we've got basically the second column is indicating the what's proposed in this particular proposal today, or a draft of the proposal that we will then refine in order to take to the working group. The left-hand column is basically what are the base cardinalities and elements. There's obviously a lot more elements than this, but it's a subset of the elements in the bundle resource defined by FHIR, but in the context of what this proposal's looking like and also what other IGs do out there. So we've got a third column there, AU patient summary bundle, and the IPS bundle, so 2.0, and we also got a FHIR clinical document implementation guide that's published by HL7. There's 2 versions of that, pretty much the same, primarily at this stage, at this high level, but we've got a couple of a new iteration of that STU, which is in draft at the moment. they're reconciling. So if we look at identifier element, pretty much there's some consistency across the board here. So I feel that a good starting point for AU Core document bundle would be to have a mandatory must support identifier. Don't know if there's any sort of comments around that. I guess what is stipulated in the FIRE clinical document is that the sub-elements of that is system and value are also mandatory, which is somewhat obvious otherwise than without a value, and identifier is pretty useless. But in the context of AU Core profiles, we don't normally go down to that sub-element level. So that's why you can see in AUPS and even IPS, they haven't actually gone down to that next level to say you shall have a system and a value. It's kind of implicit. And there are some underlying rules around in FIRE that you have to have some kind of value of sorts. The next one is type, and again, it's pretty ubiquitous across the top here. It is mandatory already in FIRE, and we're just marking them as must support, but we are fixing this in the context of this profile, document bundle profile of a type of document. Yes, Danielle.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit slow to respond on your the comment on identifiers. And I mean, in as much as I think if people are new to information sessions, and for some people this is the first time, I think just for context as well, this is you have any question, any question at all, just put your hand up. We're not voting on anything today. This is like an exploration of topics. So this is the opportunity to go to even say things like, you say this word bundle. Could you elaborate on that, right? So absolutely open to all the kind of questions. Um, I think I uh, I I 100% agree that I think identifiers must support. I think all the conversations that I've heard in the last 15 years of digital health have been that through documents and how we manage them, that an identifier is important for that. I think it's a bit interesting as to what is the difference between a bundle identifier and a composition identifier and how that works. That could be something that's interesting to I don't know if people on the line are familiar with the difference between the two and what do they do? And why would we have must support on potentially both? Um, but yeah, so I agree with must support on bundle identifier.
And I mean, I'm just pulling up, I don't know if we've got a profile in the CI build yet for AU Core composition. Has that got through into the publication yet?
No, it's still in development.
So I don't have it handy what was actually I probably do in the wiki. So let me see what the proposal was for document composition. What I'm trying to remember is whether it was a mandatory identifier and I don't believe it was. No. So this is, and I'll go back a step as well. This is the sort of information session pages around composition. And again, for people that are not familiar with document bundles, one of the rules in FIRE is that the first entry, effectively content within the bundle, is a composition resource. So this is the profile that will be contained within this document bundle. And this is the profile that was proposed and is still being added into the CI build or the continuous build of the AU Core IG. We've got an identifier that is must support, but it's only optional. And I guess to compare that against what's being proposed here is this is the mandatory one. And if we look at some of these other IGs, as Danielle was suggested, it is really used for document management systems so that you've got at least a business identifier compared to an actual fire resource identifier, which can change as it moves around different fire servers, that there is always at least one business identifier that never changes no matter where it's stored. That identifies this particular bundle that contains the document information. Tawinda, I saw your hand up briefly. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, and it's in a generic document, it is clearly call out that this for the document bundles, identifier must be a unique value and must be available. So it's a mandatory to have that. So yeah, it should be there. Mandate.
Thank you. While I'm on the wiki, I've also very quickly put together this vendor support page, which is going to be published for vendors to provide their feedback on what elements that they already support in their implementations or intend to support in their implementations. And see how that aligns with what's being proposed as part of this AU Core document bundle as well. So that's the starting point of this page. It's got this comparison table in there as well. So this will be sort of used for future reference. But if you have a system that is implementing bundle, it would be appreciated if you could fill out that page. Yes, Tawinda.
There's another thing to call out clearly. Doc identifier linked to a bundle should never be reused, even in the case of supersede the document. When we are superseding, the composition identifier will be the same that was used for the document, but the bundle identifier will always be unique. So I think, I'm not sure if you want to call it out in the description.
I think that is a good call out. And I mean, we're not going into those specific details as part of this profile proposal at this point in time, because that does dive into some of the specifics around document management. But there is certainly some guidance around that in this Fire Clinical Document IG on how replacements of documents. But I think you're right along those lines that is the that unique ID for this document, even in its various iterations of version management, and hence why it's mandatory. So thank you, Tawinda, to raise that. Okay, moving on. I pretty much just said type is fixed across the board to document. We have I guess a pattern where we mark anything that is mandatory as also must support. So that's why in AUPS and AU Core, they are must supports, whilst the ones on the right don't have that same requirement. Timestamp is, I'll just basically double check what the bundle resource definition for this is.
Yeah, it's essentially mandatory. So, like with identifier, there's some invariants present on the bundle resource that say if it's a type document versus like search set, then identifier must be present, and that's also the same thing with timestamp. So that is mandatory. So that's just us making it clear on the cardinality when that rule is that rule is already there.
Yeah, and so it's when the bundle was assembled. And so it not necessarily the clinical date. Oh, what happened there? It's not necessarily the clinical date when the document was authored. It was actually when the bundle was assembled containing that composition, etc. So there's multiple dates here, but just to be clear that there is a bit of a nuance around what we're talking about here with the timestamp, and that goes, again, these are generic. This is a generic resource that's used for all of those use cases, including search responses, where that timestamp can be populated for that purpose, and it would be the time when that search response was assembled as well. So in the context of a document, it was when the composition was bundled up into this document bundle resource, not necessarily when the composition was created or the document was authored itself.
Or then there's that other one, the care period that's in composition. So there are like two primary dates in the composition resource, the one around like event period as well as composition date that do those other things that you were saying.
Yeah. And then we get down into the entries. So the entry by default allows 0. It can be an empty, and again, in the context of a search response, it can be an empty response. So hence it's 0, or it can have multiple resources. So a couple of the fields that is contained, sub-elements of that is a URL. And again, there's some conditional requirements around when a full URL is populated, but it based on the type. But in the context of a document, the full URL is mandatory in this particular case. So we're proposing that that will be must support there. You'll notice that in the FHIR clinical document, it's not actually mandatory or constrained to being mandatory for all entries, but they have defined that there is a resource contained in that. So in other words, every entry shall have a resource, and that's not something that we have defined in AU patient summary or IPS. So there are a couple of variations around those areas there. So I guess that's really to align with the IPS and AUPS. The proposal is that we, for every entry occurrence, that we will make full URL mandatory and must support. Michael.
Thanks, Heath. Yeah, I agree that we should be aligning with IPS because that's what we're primarily using this for. But I'm curious what the distinction there is between like why a clinical document is different and why they might have made that distinction. Do you know what the reasoning might be there?
I don't know off the top of my head the reasoning.
Well, maybe the mechanics of it. Like, so what's the difference between having a full URL and a resource in there as the entry, how it behaves?
Yeah, I'm surprised the full URL is not there. Maybe they're relying on the underlying. I thought that there was an invariant that says that full URL is mandatory for documents, because that's the only way that you can do references within a bundle. So I'm surprised that Bioclinical Document Bundle doesn't actually have that specified. So I'll just bring that up here. That you can see there that as part of their key elements, they have not actually got it specified as must support or even mandatory. But just seeing with the full URL,
There's no
so here are the
invariant.
invariants. There's no invariant.
No, not that requires it when it's a typed document, which I agree is strange, but because it is the safest and probably really the only way to ensure that the resources you're referencing are the ones that are actually contained in the bundle, as opposed to, I don't know, something else, like going off on a server and finding things. So yeah, I'm surprised it's not present, but it isn't, and I just checked R5 and it's not there either.
So
So
with this, if you have the full URL and it's not in the bundle, right? That's not valid then, right? If you had a URL that pointed to something on a server rather than inside the bundle, would that fail validation?
So there's narrative in IPS or even in FHIR documents, like there's a page around FHIR documents that basically says that any composition reference, like any element, any resource that is referenced from a composition within a document shall be contained within the bundle. Now, without a full URL, you have to, that's how you reference things within a bundle. So it's very strange to me that they haven't got an invariant to say that full URL is mandatory on every entry for document
It's
bundles.
probably worth trying to submit or ask structured docs. I don't know if I think Stephen's on the line. I don't know if this question has come up, Stephen, that you're familiar in any of the structured docs conversation at International, but I think we should follow up with them. It is quite strange to me that there isn't a rule for bundles of type document. Totally makes sense for all the other bundles. That's exactly right. We want them to go off and hit the server. But in this case, the entries that are listed in a bundle of type document, they are meant to be contained inside it, and the only safe way to reference that is with full URL. So yeah, I am surprised.
Yeah, I think that's good from our point of view, is that like the what we're looking at and the way we want to use it for documents is that we absolutely want that full URL. So I think that's good. We're kind of saying, well, we think they're a bit strange rather than they're doing something that we need to consider, right? So that's good.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the first entry. So in the FHIR resource constraints, there is a rule that says for type document, it implies that the first entry has a resource of type composition. So we represent these in, and I'll just maybe try and bring up patient summary as slices to articulate this clearly. So we have this first slice that is of type composition, and you can see in AUPS it's an AUPS composition. In IPS it's a composition UV IPS, and in clinical document they've used their clinical document composition. So the principle here is that, again, we've already approved that there will be an AU Core composition profile in AU Core, so we will leverage that as our base referenced resource. So just to put this in context, talking about these slices and what this looks like in reality. So we talked about the full URL being mandatory and must support on all slices, so all entries. That's this part of the profile. And then we've got a slice that is called composition. That is also a entry, but we've got some further constraints that says, okay, not only has it got a full URL that's mandatory and must support, but we've also got a resource that is mandatory and must support and has a type of AUPS. So it'll be very similar, it'll be an AU Core composition instead. So again, that pattern is quite consistent across the board and complies with the underlying requirements of a document bundle. Any comments on that, or are we good? Okay. So the next one is around a patient slice. And if we go back to our scope where we said that this is a profile for clinical documents for a subject of care. So effectively, that is what we talked about as the scope of this profile, and hence it makes sense that we also make patient a mandatory entry in this profile as well. That is a pattern that's already been applied in IPS that we've followed in a UPS because we derive from IPS. So as we generalize this principle into AU Core, it would make sense for us to follow that same principle. On the right-hand side, however, you can see that FHIR Clinical Documents IG has not restricted it to a patient, that it would be allowing it for other purposes and other than being for a specific patient. So any comments on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it does have a search parameter for composition, and you can chain it with the patient subject. So that can lead you to search for a given patient. So you are actually searching a bundle through a composition that belongs to a patient.
Yeah, we'll get to search parameters later in the call, hopefully, and so we can go into more depth around that. But yeah, along those lines, I don't know how viable or efficient that will be, but you know, I would like to have that conversation when we get later in the session.
I think I have one comment that I'm strongly in support of not putting mass support on the unsliced entry and putting mass support on composition and patient, and then therefore also downstream IGs will, put whichever entries that they want to have mass support on. So I think that's good. And I think if we haven't already, and I'll have to check our review notes, we probably want to try to put some feedback back into FHIR ClinDocs around putting just mass support on the unsliced entry, which it does worry me. I don't know if anyone wants more detail on that or if
This one here, yeah.
Danielle,
Yeah.
I have posted in the chat the links to the FHIR clinical document for HL7 clinical document FHIR IG about the bundle profile, which are the slices, the entry slices, and also the clinical document composition entry. Both of them includes full URL 0.1. I missed part of your questions. Are you asking the question whether or not they should be 1.1 or whether or not they actually contain the full URL element at all? So what is exactly your question?
On full URL, we were questioning why it wasn't made mandatory for a clinical document.
Yeah, I think the thinking at the time was that it is a generic profile, not a use case specific profile. So therefore, it didn't. The group didn't want to tighten the constraint
Mm.
at that level. So, but I can take the question back to the group and say that can we or should we be reconsidering tightening the constraint at 1.1 if that's the question.
I think that's the question worth asking because we
Okay.
agree that, like in bundles in general, you don't want to be generic, but this is a bundle of type document, and I think full URL is necessary, which is why I'm fully on board with the proposal on the screen for us to make it mandatory. And I'm quite curious why it's not mandatory in the FHIR clinical document spec. So, yeah, I would love it if you took that query back.
Sure, I will do that. I think from my recollection, the conversation at the time was that I will leave the further constraint to downstream use case specific IGs, but I can certainly bring the question back to the group and then report back to this group when I get the question. Well, when I get the question answered.
Daniel, the Shogun here. I think there is an invariant which says that bundle should have that full URL populated.
I
Or
went
suddenly,
looking for it and I couldn't see that when it's bundle of type document. I didn't see an invariant that was present for it. If there is one, that's great.
yeah, I think I'm looking at maybe release 6, but there is an invariant called BDL15, and that has explicitly said that the full URL must be populated if it is not transaction or transaction response or post request.
But obviously we're working on R4, so
Yeah,
that's not
that
there.
isn't. Yeah.
All right, so what I might do then is just to go through a Minty to capture some individual thoughts around these. Okay, so if we can go back to Minty, so what AU core document bundle elements shall be must support? So I've only included the ones that I've put in the slides so far. And there will be the opportunity to, if you think there are other elements that need to be must support, then I'll give you that opportunity
I
in
think there's a
a couple
problem.
of slides.
People can only
So,
select like 3. I think the way
Yeah,
this
what if
got
I want to select
formatted,
all of them?
yeah, you can't select all.
okay, let me see if I can fix that. I only had 3 items and that was first selected. A few pages with the same problem, so let me fix them all.
Yeah, it's working now.
Is it?
Yeah. Did something.
Well, you were in edit mode, so I'm surprised it's even allowing you to do it.
Yeah, let me submit.
So what is it? Where are we?
Because every time you
Okay.
move screen, I get you. It's being shown to everybody. But yeah, okay. No, I've got it now. You didn't give us an option for other or additional.
There's another slide for that.
Ah, okay. Hmm.
So I don't know whether it's just the glitch that we went through, but those that have said that composition resource and patient resource are not must support, do you want to provide some thinking around that, or was it just
Danielle
a
just
little bit
put
unclear on how to ask the question?
Danielle put some clarification in the comments, the chat, noting about what must support means versus cardinality. Noting that, yeah, just because it says must support, if the cardinality is optional, if you don't have it, you don't have to provide it. So, Heath, are you able to show the screen that you had before, which had the must supports highlighted? Just looking at all of these, so all of our must supports we actually are saying mandatory. So they are 1 or 2 in case of entry. So yeah, so we've actually upped the cardinality as well, proposing to up it. So everything's got a must support is actually mandatory.
So that is actually the next question. So I'm just asking what should be must support first, and then we'll move on to what is mandatory. Okay, so I think that's slowed down, so I might move to the next one. So what document bundle entries shall be mandatory? And again, I guess that maybe there was some issues around why is the composition entry, what's the difference between composition and composition.resource? Now, composition.resource is a sub-element within the composition entry. And basically what we're now talking about from a mandatory perspective is that, and keeping in mind that this is a bundle, so these entries, or in particular the resource sub-element of the entry, is where you actually put the data, and it's where the actual resource goes. So the fact that you can't really have an entry without the resource to some extent. Hopefully that's a valid statement. So in particular for composition and patient, you don't want to have one of those, if it's patient is mandatory, then we really need to be considering the resource associated with it being carried. Without the resource, that entry is useless. Haven't quite got the same number as the last slide, so a couple more.
Well, there is also an invariant on that. So for entry, unless there's a request or response, there has to be a resource. So that is enforced. So that's just, being clear in our specification that that's a requirement for bundles of type document.
All right, so moving on, what other elements do you think should be considered as minimum expectation from the bundle resource? So what I might do just to provide some background around this is what are the other elements in a bundle resource? So there are other things like the total number of resources, but that's really in the context of a search response. Here is our entry. We've got the full URL and the resource that we talked about. There's things around search information. There's stuff around requests, which is really about when we're submitting requests through transactions, batches, and history. So that's not relevant. And then we've got responses, which is again for transaction, batch, and history. And then there's the signature element. Now, I will note that signature has been deprecated in R5. It is not removed, but it has been deprecated, and hence it is something that we could use as part of our profiles, but it's likely that we will use a different approach in the future. So someone has suggested signature, and I think that's a reasonable thing to ask. And would you like to comment?
Yep, that was me. My two thoughts were none and signature. I think we should address the signature aspect, and maybe because I guess the deprecation, so the follow through of signature's been deprecated in favor of using real provenance, right? And so perhaps the next step in AU Core is we don't put must support and signature, and instead we go straight to what is the permanent solution. We work out how we do that, if that's of interest, with provenance. That's my thought. But I just wanted to flag it so that we could talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we've got another one around confidentiality. Does anyone want to talk to that one?
Yeah, just past that to raise a flag. Like when we are creating documents, we would like to have this information stored. in the document. Sure,
Mm.
probably a meta tag within the bundle, or how? What are the other ways you guys can think of?
I think confidentiality is an element inside the composition resource. Or like the equivalent of it, I think. So I think the bundle's just the wrapper and I'll just double check, but I think that's where it's sitting, which is similar to how it is in CDA, although in Australia we've essentially banned the use of that at that level. No, it's not
So
there.
it's in Meta. So meta.security is the one that I'm aware of.
There's
Unless there's a dedicated one in composition for this purpose.
I think there is confidentiality. It's present in composition.
just trying to look, I really thought there was a thing.
And that because we call composition
Yeah,
as
you're
a
right.
document. So composition is called as a document. So that's there. But concern is like if it is a confidential document and it's the bundle wrapped by a bundle, do we want someone to open the composition and see? Sorry, open the composition and see, or without opening the composition, we want to call it that this is a confidential document.
Yeah, I'll note that the confidentiality element inside R4 has been removed in R5. So it no longer exists in R5. But I think some of that we might also have to depend on some of the national infrastructure work that's coming through, record locator service, how a national consent framework is going to come. I agree with you, it's important. I don't know that we're at the stage that we can confidently declare a standard on that yet.
And is it a minimum expectation? So if we go back to the original scope and what AU Core is about, is it a minimum expectation that covers all use cases or many use cases? So I agree with you that it's necessary, but yeah, it's probably a bit early. Brett?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's disappeared from. So you would use Meta, but I think the issue would be that we don't really have an agreement on the use of Meta and tags anyway, for security codes. So that's almost a project itself, I reckon, to say how do we have a common understanding. And I think it's more of an overlay on this usage. So I don't think it would be all the time either, like I said.
Okay, so the next question is to address the obligations. So for those that are perhaps new, the obligations is probably a concept that you may not be overly familiar with, but when we define things as must support or elements as must support, we in AU Core also provide an extra statement around what is a expectation on the actors that are also defined within an IG. So in AU Core, we have a requester actor and a responder actor. The requester is the one doing a query for data or a request, and the responder is the server that is responding to that query. And the expectations are for a responder by default are populate if known. So if there's a value that is known by the server, they are expected to populate the element. And from a requester's perspective, when they receive that response, that they should not error on that. And that's a little bit ambiguous in the context of no error is because you can actually respond with an error, but that is something that you have deliberately addressed as part of processing and you've identified that it's an invalid thing or value rather than it being a valid value. So just the fact that something is populated, you shouldn't just fall over and say, but don't know what that is. That is not allowed as far as these obligations are concerned. So we have this set that we use. In some IGs, they have actually tightened those constraints into things where you shall demonstrate capability of providing that in some circumstances. And so from a responder's perspective, you could potentially say you shall handle it. But these are the standard ones. There would have to be a very good reason in AU core for us to strengthen them. So I see someone who's actually suggested that patient resource might want to be strengthened. Would you like to comment on that one?
Yeah. Thoughts are I might not want to include patient details in the bundle. A reference is enough for it, like whom belongs to it. But if it doesn't hold complete patient details, will that matter? To say I will error it out. It's always mandatory.
So as we normally do in AU core, we've got our missing data and suppression principles. So the if known has this aspect of, allowed to share. So if it's an issue around masking or you don't have the appropriate rights to be able to share this information, then that's something that can be a data absent reason flag could be put on these based on the default principles of missing data and suppressed data and what that if known it already talks about. Does that sort of cover what you're talking about, Tailwinder? Or do you want to strengthen that?
Yeah. See, bundle is just an envelope. It doesn't hold, shouldn't hold. It's a main document is a composition, and that has a reference to every required party and information. But we are adding more details to the bundle, calling it out externally. So envelope calling out the belonging person. It's something I just want
Right.
to avoid.
So again, there's this rule that as a composition, anything that is referenced directly from the composition, you have to include that resource within the bundle. And because patient is mandatory within the AU core composition, you then also, that kind of implies that you shall provide a patient resource in the bundle as well. Otherwise, you're invalid against those via document rules.
Yeah.
So you have to provide one. In theory, you could DAR it, but
I actually don't know if you can DAR it.
yeah, I was starting to
Um,
question that too.
I think Douchey, we did some testing on this around whether or not it was possible to DAR, and I think we worked out that the FHIR validator doesn't allow it for like patient and composition for bundles of type document. Is that
That's
right?
correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so you can't DAR it. You could DAR, yes, thank you, Michael. You could treat all the elements inside the patient resource, I suppose, as data absent reason, but you have to provide a resource. Otherwise it just completely fails like all validation for everything.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, did you have another comment, Danielle? I'm seeing from the chat.
No, I mean, I've put some stuff in the chat, but the reason I initially put my hand up was to support, I guess, that conversation with Talwinder around whether or not we really had to put in an actual resource or whether or not we could make use of any of the other elements or data absent reason. And yeah, no, we've done the testing. You have to supply a composition and a patient resource. Yeah, just have to. But yes, inside those, there are the elements like around name. If what's important is to mask that, you can use the like suppressed data guidance to like mask the actual name and the identifier and all those kinds of things.
Yep.
Okay. So then next one, we're talking about bindings. Now, normally I would have a whole session around or a whole agenda item for bindings, but I couldn't find anything that we needed to do bindings for. So I guess this is just to confirm that if anyone has got any thoughts around us needing to have any code bindings on any of the elements. I mean, the only code that I can see that we've marked as must support is type, which we fixed to document. So this is really just to confirm that.
But I mean, there's no possible element we could do terminology on. Like every
That was
binding that
my
exists
assessment
is
too.
required.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a trick question. There's we have no option. And all the as Tailwinder said, like the bundle, these are just the wrappers. Like all the stuff that's actually clinically relevant is in the composition. This is just a technical wrapper, and those values are completely fixed by the fire standard. Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be trick. It was more of a confirmation, given it's one of those tick boxes that we have to tick off. So, all right, sounds like we agree that there is no further bindings. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
There is a field bundle dot link that has a bindings, but I'm not sure if we want to define our own for it.
Well, it needs to be must support before we even consider it. So unless it's must support,
it's not. It's not. I don't think it's a must support. It's only for if we want to give a reference for any link.
But link is the link elements are either
for paging.
like backbone.
Yeah.
It's for paging from as far as I know. I don't think it's relevant in documents.
No, it can be I think images, for example. I'm not sure if that goes to the composition. No, it's going to be different.
Again, I think from a minimum expectations, we have to have a pretty good use case that's ubiquitous.
Disclosures. Anyway, not important.
And just sorry,
All right.
checking Tailwinder, were you thinking because there's actually a couple of link elements in bundle. So there's like bundle.link, and then there's like bundle.entry.link. And then I think those are the two that are currently available in R4. Which one were you thinking about, just out of interest?
Bundle.link.
Okay. Do you have a use for that? Is that like part of your use case?
Not really presently. No, we are not thinking, but yeah, this is useful in some cases. I put any disclosures or pre-information that you want to link through. But presently, I don't see a use case.
Okay.
Okay, so search parameters. Again, this was a little bit challenging for me. So I would be interested in your thoughts around what might be useful. So when we're doing I guess a bundle endpoint search, what are the parameters that we want to be searching on? And I mean, document again is just one type of bundle. We have message, which really don't get persisted. I understand there's another one which is collection. My understanding is that gets persisted on the bundle endpoint. But the others are search response and the other one that I was thinking of is transaction and batch. So they're more interaction-based bundles. So the two types that would be persisted on the bundle endpoint are document and collection. So I guess from a profiling perspective, does it make sense to have a type search parameter, especially when it's already in the context of a document bundle profile? I've put it here as shall. As Tawinda suggested earlier, there is a composition search parameter that but standalone, I'm not sure is overly useful. But certainly as something that is chained with things like composition.patient, composition.type, and composition.date could become useful. And then I guess the final one is around type plus timestamp. So keeping in mind, again, timestamp is when the bundle was assembled, but I'm thinking that it could be useful in the context of just what documents exist within some sort of date range, irrespective of it being clinically relevant date range. So open to thoughts and considerations on what our minimum expectations of search parameters might be, Marika.
I don't disagree with the fact that composition.patient would potentially be useful as a search parameter. I just wonder if this is actually the entry point, and worry that you're implying by stating this here that people will support chaining to be able to support these search parameters, which I don't think is something we've done before in core, and is not something that is always supported. So I wonder whether or not that should be should as opposed to shall. Also, if we've fixed the type of our document bundle, like we're literally a document bundle, it feels redundant to say it's a document bundle. You must support, or sorry, you shall support searching on the type of the bundle. That feels a bit weird to me, but I'm
What that
open
would
to
do is require you to support a search that returns every document in your system. Basically, that's what that would do.
fair.
And
Which might
I mean,
be, oh, I don't know, that seems a bit big.
Yeah, a little tricky.
I don't think we can shell that. That's one of the reasons why on observation Epic successfully argued that we shouldn't have like a patient, just like by patient, give me all observations. The by type thing, which doesn't even have a patient qualifier, is, I mean, the My Health record has what, at this point, billions? Like, I don't think that's viable.
so what about the next level down? So let's address your chaining question, I guess. So we do have chaining on things like patient.identify. So in AU Core. So from that perspective, we do have chaining. We do have a precedent for chaining. And I guess that, and I'm probably leaning on you a bit, Danielle, on sort of the principles around how this works. But for us to do chain, like I see composition.patient as the useful one. But to even do that chaining, you have to support the composition. But parameter, I guess, is what I'm alluding to. So I don't know how to represent this or how to even pitch this in the working group, to be honest. That's understandable. So I'm really
Well, okay,
hoping to get some support here.
I'm happy to talk about chaining as well. And so my first response is that I don't think any of these can be shall. We are very aware that there's national infrastructure coming with a record locator service. And the kind of like it doesn't mean we couldn't have a type may or a type should or something. But I think shall, even for composition, shall, I think bundle search is, I think we need a much wider conversation on that and an understanding where the national infrastructure is coming from before we would escalate anything to a shell. It's like one of the things that we've done the least in Australia. So we could look at some shoulds, and so far all the chaining is a should. Um, so we've got like the patient.identifier stuff. All of the chaining at the moment is a should. So we could recommend a should, take that to ballot, see how it works, but I feel quite unconfident around, I guess, the bundle search, and I can totally see why this was very difficult for you, because I think this is one of the least explored areas that we've had in terms of implementing fire in Australia.
I'm almost wondering whether we do not state anything. I wonder if we have no minimum expectations on search parameters.
No, we have done that before. There are several resources. So far, there are things like medication and practitioner where we've said there are none. Um, we could proffer some maze, as in you might want to do this. Please be aware these are combinations. But we could also, and maybe we would then add a note in the IG if the reason that we're not doing this is because this is a pretty foundational kind of search thing around records in Australia that we can't do it yet, that we maybe just say, look, we're not going to put any in yet, and that is the decision, and we have a note explaining why, and then we're going to do the work to discuss that. We could do that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think having any search on bundle is really not that valuable, because I think if you're trying to discover documents, you'll probably do it through composition anyway. So I kind of think if you're discovering documents, use composition.
That's not possible. You have to go through a bundle to find it. So
find a composition. Right. So
to find a composition within a bundle, a persisted document on the bundle endpoint, the composition is contained within the bundle. It's not a separate entity.
Yeah, got it.
So you have to go through the chaining mechanism to find it by composition.
Yeah, or require indexing.
Or you extract it out. But,
yeah, exactly. Yep, all right.
There's that transaction operation or whatever they've got. But if you're simply storing a composition or exposing a composition, a bundle document, how are you going to query it by composition? You have to use this composition parameter.
Yeah, that makes sense for, I guess, even external documents that you don't have a composition entry. Yeah.
I'm going to say yes, no.
Awesome.
I mean, yes, on a normal file server, but there are also some things that are being talked about around, like, I mean, if you explode it out, you process this through with the things that you make available in terms of particular search parameters. I mean, I kind of suspect you're right there, Heath, but yeah, I suspect you're right for that kind of search, if that's how we want to support it. I really think, though, it's probably docref. It's probably going to be document reference or something else on how we get access to these things. And I think that's actually a combined search where, actually, sorry, not a combined discussion where instead of going, what are the bundle search parameters, I think we need to sit down and go, how are we going to search to find this? Are we using bundle? Are we using composition? Are we using document reference? And I think that's what needs to happen. So yeah, no, I'm around to just going, let's defer this for now.
Michael?
I'd probably lean a little bit further than that and maybe suggest maze on these, because it is kind of highlighting people looking at this, like how you could pull it out, right? Using that chaining, sort of indicating that that is the process. If you were trying to search on this directly, how you would need to do it. So I think it's useful to have them there as maze, just to provide that sort of guidance as this is how you may want to do it, right? We're not being like, not putting any conformance on it whatsoever. It's just like kind of pointing you in the right direction of if you're looking to do this, where you might want to look, versus saying nothing, which means an implement just goes, I don't know, we've got no guidance whatsoever, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So I think that might be a bit more useful, but interested in what others think.
So what I might skip to is this next one, which is about our capability statement. So what we would normally do, I've got some typos here. Composition should mean bundle. And I'm starting to question whether this should even be, the search type should even be included, or where we should only support read. In fact, I think definitely shouldn't be a shall, based on what we've just talked about. So it's either removed altogether, or it might be a may, in line with Michael. And whether it, I'm almost getting to the point where should it be even in the capability statement for these
No, it needs
actors?
to be.
Because where's my
Even if
animation
we say
gone?
may, we are very clear. We must have for every single profile a clarification on the conformance level for our actors. So it they have to be included, whether it's a may, a should, a shall, whatever. But we must be clear about that. Otherwise, we're just silent, and people go, "Well, what is the support requirement?" So no, they've got to be in. The base system profile is not appropriate because this is not a bundle profile. This is a
Exactly.
document profile. It's like an observation. So it has to actually become a supported profile, not a base profile. Yeah. But it
Yeah.
does need to be in the capability statement.
So resource conformances should. Base system profile would be just simply bundle. Profile conformance shall still.
I'd have to look it up, but we would follow the observation method where this particular profile is not a true, I'll just say true AU core profile, as in it encompasses all possible instances of that resource type, right? It is actually specific to some kind of thing. So we would follow the pattern that we have used in observation to how we include those within a capability statement safely. And I think I don't think we set a base system profile. The automatic thing, if you don't set it, is the fire resource anyway. I think we listed as a supported profile. I think, look, we've got a standard set of wording around how we do that, and that's what we would apply.
Yeah. Okay, so we're
Yeah,
Michael,
Michael's got
go.
his hand up.
Sorry, mine wasn't on that, but mine, you did mention it before, and I assume you're coming back around to it. But I think search type just matches whatever we have on the search parameters, whatever the highest is. So if they're mays, the search type is may. If they become shoulds, then the search type is should. We're not going to have shalls, so it won't be shall.
Or nothing if we do nothing.
Yeah, if we say nothing, then it's nothing. Yeah. So just match whatever we come up with for the search parameters.
So I was just bringing up the observation one here. So core fire profile
Oh yeah, we did
interaction
actually list that, which would be the
resource.
equivalent of base system. Yeah, okay.
So there's no base system profile.
No.
Profile conformance, there's no profile conformance either.
No,
Yeah.
it's almost
So
impossible to write conditionally. So, and profile conformance is actually a programmatic element, so we've not been able to use it.
so basically they will not be specified.
Yeah.
And I think what we're basically saying is it's either a may or a shall, should. So, I guess one final, let's see what I had for a minty and we'll close out. Because it would have been about this. So see if these make sense in the context of what we talked about. What bundle search parameters have a mandatory support conformance requirement for AU Core document bundle? Let's see what responses we get for this. And I'm sorry that question doesn't make a lot of English sense,
You don't have a
but
none.
hopefully. Okay, let me add a none. That was quick.
I think I clicked on it when it was still option 7.
Yeah, we actually get to Heath see exactly what you're doing, like in real time. Like on our Menti option selection. It's very cool.
All right, so assuming that none means that we're not going to include search type as an interaction.
Well, you said mandatory.
Okay,
So the question is mandatory.
good point.
And I think we've
Yeah.
all agreed there's no mandatory here. Uh,
All
oh,
right.
and then here's one for should. Okay.
For mandatory, sorry, I was.
Mm.
Do we want our system, like for example ADHI as a system? Do they want to expose the system, like give me all the documents versus for a specific patient only? Like so, patient composition dot patient
Well, I think that's part
should
of
be.
the question, well, part of the different elements that are search parameters, sorry, that are being exposed. Although there's no give me all documents for a patient listed, there's give me all documents of a, well, give me all composition types for a certain patient. So I suppose there isn't the exact one that I think you are asking, which is give me all documents for a patient.
Yes, give me all the documents for a given patient.
Yeah.
It, I think I feel like that should be, we should keep it as mandatory for searches. Like even from the security perspective or other implications, we don't like this is whoever is exposing this API to fetch the document don't want to expose all the documents without any criteria.
Personally, there's a feasibility question.
Yeah, I think the question is feasibility.
Heath, you can only pick one, but missed two, by the way.
Uh, okay.
How that is going to be different, Daniel? Like in e-requesting, that we kept on a search parameter as mandatory, isn't?
There is, I think, a difference between searching for orders versus searching for all documents. Um, some systems will hold thousands upon thousands of documents, depending on also like if they're a HIE or otherwise, for a single patient. And so I think just saying give me all documents for a patient is I don't think we should be setting that in AU Core. I think that particular systems could offer that in their capability statements, but I think it's actually a pretty hard ask to just set that across the nation because of the sheer scale effort that would be involved.
So the fact that you've used the composition resource, sorry, the composition parameter implies that you're talking about documents. So we could consider in that in that vein, because the way that the composition parameter is defined is that it is of type document, or sorry, of type composition, right? So that the entry is of type composition. So I think that kind of could be implied. So I guess what I'm alluding to is that the eighth option, which is type plus composition dot patient, is equivalent to the composition dot patient scenario. All right. I have one final. I think it's final. Yep. What other search parameters are minimum conformance requirements for bundle? So I'll leave it on that one. And I guess maybe again comes back to should we even be supporting search type as a interaction, as a minimum expectation for this profile, and whether it's a may or a should, etc. So I guess in the 1 minute that we've got, do we perhaps just put your comment in here on whether we should not support search or may support search? Be useful. So ignore this question, maybe answer in the context of whether we should be supporting search. As may or should. Okay. Thank you very much. That was a little bit challenging, and appreciate your support and patience to get through that. Actually, there is one more question, and it is about what's the priority for including AU Core Document Bundle into the AU Core OG? So this is, do we want this in R3? Or can it wait until a future release of AU Core? Or it's not needed, or basically you don't care because it doesn't affect you. So this is where we need to work out whether we are going to request another call, AU Core call, in order to get this work done to have it included in R3. So that's why we're asking this question. If there's enough appetite from you guys that this is essential for R3, or whether it can wait until later.
That need versus want. So I think
well, that's why I've termed it in priority. You know, what's the priority?
Yeah. I think there's an argument that we don't need it, but we might want it.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the need is somewhat deliberate. That can we do without it? Because it's coming down to timing. So I will dwell on this one, and hopefully we can get some more responses to this. I'd be really interested to see if we can at least get half those responses, or at least those are still on the call.
Heath, I was going
Yes,
to suggest that this is the question we can ask in the AU Core work group, the next work group as well, to say, look, to the broader audience, just to say, do we want an extra session to do this? So it might be say, we had this information session. This is the response we got there. We can open it up to the broader audience there and say, do they agree with this outcome or this?
Yeah, I think that's what we agreed, wasn't it? That we would
Yeah.
have like a 5-minute discussion
Yep.
on bundle, on whether we even want to do this effectively.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah,
In the next meeting, yeah.
we kind of, I guess this outcome of this could feed into, or this is what this group thought. What does then the working group think? All right, thank you very much again. Happy Friday. Enjoy the weekend.
Have a good weekend, Heath. Well
Sorry
done.
about the slow start.
Thanks, Heath.
Thanks, Heath.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks,
Right.
Heath.